The stream is now live.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet on Wednesday the 21st of October 2020. Before we commence with the proceedings, I can confirm that the Council has opted some basic etiquette rules for its remote meetings, and these include: please only speak when the Chairman invites you to do so. Please let the Chairman know that you wish to speak by raising your hand. When asked to vote, please raise your hand. Please minimise all distractions while you are in the meeting and mute your microphone when you are not speaking. Members may wish to consider turning off their video to reduce the interference on the audio feed. Please bear in mind that there may be a lag between the speakers and other attendees hearing you. Please quote page numbers and slide numbers when referring to a document. There is private items for this meeting. Members are therefore reminded to make sure that their venue and connection to this meeting is secure at the appropriate time. If you lose connection at any point to this meeting, please attempt to rejoin the meeting and you'll be readmitted by the meeting facilitator. If you have any problems, please contact me within the office. Please only use the chat function for the purpose for asking to speak or for a point of order. The chat function is subject to the rules of access of FOIEIR. It's also subject to data protection and rules of defamation and the Council's Code of Conduct. To assist with managing the chat function, the agenda items will be placed in the chat function as a marker. The members of the Cabinet are Councillors Graham Butland, David Bebb, Kevin Bowers, Tom Cunningham, John McKee, Frankie Ritchie, Wendy Schmidt, Gabrielle Spray and Peter Tattersley. Other members in attendance are at the invitation of the leader, and these are Councillor Jackie Powell and Councillor David Mann. These members may participate in the debate but may not vote. There are officers also in attendance. These include Sherry Root, Dominic Collins, Chris Fleeton, Kim Cole, Aidan Kelly, and they will only be speaking when invited to do so. There are two governance officers in attendance. Alison Webb, who will be taking the minutes, and myself, Emma Wisby, who's the meeting facilitator. We've had no apologies for this evening, Chairman. I can confirm that the meeting is quorate, and I now hand the meeting over to you. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Emma. Good evening, members, and good evening to anyone watching this meeting on YouTube. As you've heard, there are no apologies for absence for tonight. There is a full turnout of members. Thank you. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest that anyone wishes to make? Please raise your hand and I will come to you. I will make a declaration of interest in respect of the Enterprise Centre as a director of CELEP Limited, to which reference is made in the report, and also as a member of Essex County Council, which again reference is made to in the report. Are there any other declarations of interest? I'm assuming Councillor Mrs. Schmidt would also want to record a member of Essex County Council in respect of the Enterprise Centre report.
Chairman, indeed.
Thank you. Any other? No? Thank you. We'll go on to item 3, minutes of previous meetings. Members, you have the minutes of the 7th of September, but there are also the minutes of the special meeting we had of Cabinet on the 31st of July also. So I'm going to put the approval of both those sets of minutes, the ones of the 31st of July and the 7th of September. Is everyone happy that they are a true record of the meeting? I'm seeing not all hands. Yes, I'm seeing all hands raised. Thank you very much. And in due course, we'll probably sign them. Item 4, public question time. There are no members of the public who wish to put questions at tonight's meeting. So we'll move on to item 5 under the heading of Environment and Place. Changes to the Off-Street Parking Places Order 2019. It appears on pages 5 to 8 of your agenda, and I will ask Councillor Mrs. Schmidt to introduce the item. Councillor Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman. At the last meeting on September the 7th, I presented changes to the Off-Street Parking Partnerships Order, Places Order 2019. But since then, I'm afraid officers have established that there was a typographical error in paragraph 2.5. And so I now recommend to Cabinet the decision that notes a typographical error relating to the increase in the tariff at Felder Square Car Park, Hatfield, Peveril. 2. to increase the tariff at Hadfelder Square Car Park, Hatfield Peveril, from £500 to £600 within the Braintree District Off-Street Parking Places order. And 3 is that Cabinet authorise the Cabinet Member for Environment and Place to agree the final amended order using delegated powers. It's that brief, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mr. Smith. Are there any comments or questions any member has? It's just a change, straight typographical error. In that case, can I have approval to the recommendations as shown on pages 5 and 6? Is that agreed? I'm seeing hands up. That's unanimous. Right. Thank you very much indeed. Right. We'll now move on under corporate transformation to item 6A, Horizon 120 Enterprise Centre. This item is set out on pages 9 to 238 of the agenda, and there is a corresponding report within the private session of this meeting at item 7A, pages 239 to 254 of the agenda. As members will be aware, the Council seeks to operate in an open and transparent way with as much information as possible in the public domain. From time to time, for a number of reasons, and in this case it's the Council's commercial interests, it's important that key elements of information are kept confidential. The confidential elements are contained in the private report and indicated with text which is marked in both bold and italics. It's often the case that members can debate the substantive issues surrounding the proposals without the need to specifically refer to the confidential elements. However, if any member feels it's necessary to raise specific points on the confidential elements, we will need to move into private session. This will, if required, mean stopping the broadcast of this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel. Given this, if any member intends to raise elements in the debate about the private information, then I would appreciate an early indication to ease the administration of the meeting. Do any members intend to raise confidential matters during the debate on this item? Can you please indicate whether you will or not? I'm not seeing any indication that any member wishes to.
Chairman, sorry to interrupt you, Chairman. Councillor Tattersley has indicated on the chat function that he wishes to speak.
Oh, Councillor Tattersley?
No, not at this stage. I just wanted to ask a question on the bulk of the report when it's been presented.
Okay, but not of a confidential nature.
No.
Thank you very much. Right. Okay. So in that case, we will move on with the items. We'll proceed to items 6A and 7A of the agenda. I'd like to invite Councillor McKee, the portfolio holder for corporate transformation, to introduce the report and to move the recommendations set out on page 10 of the public report and page 240 of the private report. Councillor McKee, please. You are mute, John.
Yes, I'm muted. Thank you. Apologies. Right. Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues, this evening before us is the business case to develop an enterprise centre on Horizon 120 Business and Innovation Park following the full council approval on the 5th of October to include this project into the council's capital programme. The council has held a long-standing intention to create an enterprise centre on Horizon 120 to meet our corporate priorities, and it was included in the District Plan for Growth 2017 to 2022 in order to attract inward investment to increase job opportunities in the district, reduce journey and commuting times, and contribute to the growth agenda. The project that we are looking at will deliver a purpose-built enterprise centre sited on land allocated for this purpose on Horizon 120. The centre will deliver a modern, high-quality, energy-efficient building to achieve minimum standard BREEAM, minimum standard of very good under BREEAM. At the Cabinet meeting on 11th of February 2019, the business case for Horizon 120 was approved, and at that meeting, the Braintree Plan for Growth was referenced, and this plan makes the strategic case for enterprise centres in the district, and this development addresses the Braintree, and in the strategic development plan is considered an enterprise centre in Witham. The need for such centres providing support service for the business that they coat there and job creation is not in doubt. However, to inform the business case and to gain professional advice on the competition for this type of centre, an appraisal of the most attractive business sectors, current space available, options to consider with cost estimates, CPC were commissioned, and the complete 70-page report is attached in Annex A, pages 23 to 92 of your agendas. Their recommendations are in section 1.3 on page 31. Note that 2 sectors on which we will focus are finance and insurance activities due to the high gross value add, professional, scientific and technical businesses, particularly in the emerging green economy because of the high incidence of local businesses in this sector. 5 design solutions for the centre were considered, and it has been decided to focus on design called the Lookout, following discussions with the Council's urban design consultant and the planning department, and will be compliant with the existing LDO design code. Further details can be found on page 16 or in your private papers 246. Details of the provision CELEP grant funding of £7 million from the government Getting Building programme are in section 2, but note this grant is dependent upon successful approval of the business case this evening and the outline business case contained in Appendix B 93 to 238 of the report, approval by CELEP Accountability Board on 20th of November. Currently the bid is at Gateway 2 stage, and following approval this evening, the formal Gateway 2 feedback, a final business case will be submitted to CELEP for the business case assessment. CELEP want to see a strong business case from the authority. However, they will assess the benefits to deliver on the expected business growth and jobs over the project lifetime, and will assess the bid based on their balanced score criteria for the returns on the investment of £7 million. Let's turn to financing. The financing of the project we funded from, firstly, the CELEP grant funding of £7 million from the Getting Building Fund. Secondly, council capital contribution to complete the development cost will be found from a mixture of capital reserves and prudential borrowing. 3, applying the Section 106 agreement contribution of £2.93 million from the Panfield Lane residential development when these monies are received by the council. However, the business case is built entirely on prudential borrowing, and these receipts will offset this borrowing and improve the returns of the scheme. 4th, allocation of 2 acres of land at Horizon 120. The capital budget includes a contingency of 10% that allows for high level of certainty about the site and development risk due to the site being in council ownership and land being contributed to the project at no cost or delay, and detailed understanding of the site conditions. It is anticipated that the Enterprise Centre will not achieve optimal occupancy until year 3, and from that point will produce revenue surpluses from 24-25 and results of the payback period of 18 years. And the proposed borrowing for 37 years. And that's assuming, as I said earlier, that there is no contribution from the Panfield Lane development. So this is about the grant scheme, and the capital ourselves will achieve the 18 years and the 37 years. So obviously the 2.93 will improve those dates significantly. However, applying the Section 106 monies to offset the prudential borrowing will reduce those timescales. The summary of the business case is detailed on page 22 of your report from CPC. In your papers 19, in the public session, refers to the financial model, and in private session, pages 250, table 3.10 are the projected costs of operations and the revenues for the 4 years of the 40 years of the project, which is the estimated economic life of the Enterprise Centre. This demonstrates the conservative estimated costs under the revenue expenditures for staffing, administration, running costs, marketing and website, property management, replacement of fixtures and fittings, ground maintenance, loan interest and sinking fund for future major repairs and or component replacement are also accounted for. On the revenue side of the account, are the projected revenues for each of the space and office types projected across the early years of the project, either through lease or rental agreements and subscriptions for the more dynamic work areas. It's assumed that the revenue starts on the 1st of October 2022, following building completion in March 2022. When creating this business case, a pessimistic approach has been taken. I'll move to the recommendations. I won't read them out. Recommendations are on the private session, as the chairman said, is I propose that Cabinet approves the business case, and I move that Cabinet notes items 2 and items 5 and approves items 3, 5 and 6. I so move, Chairman. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor McKee. Councillor McKee has moved the recommendations. Can I just formally have a seconder, please? Seconded, Councillor Cunningham. Fine. Right. Now, let's move on then. Does any member wish to speak or ask questions? If you just give me an idea by raising your hands, and then I can see how many I've got who either want to speak or ask a question. Right. Okay, fine. Right. Councillor Cunningham, you've seconded it. Do you want to speak now?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm just having a bit of trouble with my technology there. Yes, obviously, we're delighted to see this business case coming forward and appreciate it has to pass the SELAP hurdle in November. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity that has been taken by this council in terms of levering in that SELAP funding through SELAP from the government's Let's Get Building fund. I think it's a great opportunity, and it complements fully what we wanted to do with Horizon 120. And I think at this point it's only right to congratulate the considerable amount of work that's been done by officers behind the scenes to make sure we're in a position to bring this business case forward and meet some extremely tight deadlines. And I'm sure we're all extremely grateful and acknowledge the excellent work that has been going on this project, and thank Councillor McKee for bringing it forward this evening. What I would just like to ask is, this is very much focused on economic recovery. Regrettably, we are prepared that we will be going through a period of recession. We hope it doesn't become a depression, but we hope to see the green shoots of recovery very soon. But should initial take-up on this project not be at the level that perhaps we anticipate in good faith in producing the report at this moment in time, how will that impact on our finances?
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Do you want to take questions one at a time, I think, because it's a big report? So, Councillor McKee.
Yeah, I think it would be easier, Chairman. If you read the, you're absolutely right, Councillor Cunningham, that there is a risk, and it's, I think, identified in the report that there's a risk on the COVID related, but also the recession that may come after it. But if you do read the CPC report, they have factored into their estimates of both cost and income the worst, the case that is most likely, including a slow take-up of the rental and the income stream due to a depressed economy. So it isn't a business case that is assuming a normal pre-COVID. It's assuming that we are post-COVID, and it's a lot of commentary if you read the report about, you know, how it meets a demand in the market that was there before the COVID situation and still exists, according to all of the punditry and all the comments from our experts, that when we are back to more of a normal situation, the likelihood of those businesses wanting to relocate, and we've seen signs of it, as you're aware, of two businesses during the COVID restrictions have actually either signed or close to signing for other businesses on the Horizon 120. So it's right to draw that point, but I think it is because we've taken a very pessimistic and people have used the case worst case estimates of both revenue and income. I don't think we will be disappointed by the outturn in the 3 years when it comes to start incoming, plus the take up thereafter. Does that answer your question?
Councillor Cunningham?
Yes, actually, no, thank you very much. That answers it very well. Thank you very much.
Councillor Tattersley.
Thank you, Chairman. When this agenda dropped through my letterbox, I'd expected it to be quite hard going, but do you know, it's actually a very clear and detailed report. The detail in it is so comprehensive that almost every question I thought I had is very clearly covered, and I think the officers and members who put this together should be congratulated. The only real issue I have is summed up quite clearly in the second paragraph on page 11, where it talks about whilst the council anticipates a future receipt under the section 106 agreement. You can actually read it, but words like anticipate and until such time as this money is received does worry me a little bit, given the occasional uncertainty there's been about developers delaying or even actually handing over section 106 money. Councillor McKee alluded to the answer in his question, but just to be absolutely clear, that my question is what happens to the overall project if the section 106 from Panfield Lane residential development is delayed for quite a long time or not realised?
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Councillor McKee.
Well, as I said, actually the business case you're looking at assumes there is no contribution from the section 106 at all. And the business case still turns, and I think I haven't, in your report, it doesn't say what the hurdle rate that we used, and I think it's north of 7 on our normal balance scorecard. I think actually 7 point something, but Chris Fleeton probably has got a different view to me of whether it's 7.5 or 7, but doesn't matter. It meets it without that contribution. And if they don't pay that, if they don't pay that ever, the business case still stacks up, and therefore we're not dependent upon that payment. Except it will take, as I said earlier, we're on the 18 and 37 years. If it pays, it actually makes the business case better and brings those dates forward. So it's where we want to apply it because we can. If we get to the 18 years, it doesn't matter. We will still have a business park. We'll still have an innovation centre and still have a section 106 coming from building to be used somewhere else.
Chris Fleeton, do you want to add anything to that?
Just to confirm what John has said, the figures are taking a very prudent approach, making no assumptions of receiving the section 106. It still pays the money back over quite a long period of time, but we will have the assets and no account has been taken on of the asset that we'll have in hand. So it is a very prudent approach that we're taking.
Councillor Tattersley, is that to answer your question?
Yes, I just got quite concerned what impact it would have on the council's overall budgets if it was some time in coming. But I'm reassured that the section 106 would still be there and it could be used on other schemes in the future, and this scheme really isn't that dependent on it. So I'm grateful for the answer.
Thank you. Councillor Mann, I think wanted to ask something. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. No, it's more way of a statement, Chair, or a comment. I found the CPC report sort of very comprehensive, particularly in the fact in relation to tables 22 and 23, the analysis of benefits, disbenefits and risks, where there wasn't any attempt to minimise the risks, and I think quite sensible comments on mitigation, and I did note, on page 9 of the agenda report, the project has been assessed using the council's evaluation tool and exceeds the hurdle rate for capital investment, and I'm pleased that it is either 7 or 7.5. So that sort of ticks another box. I think also in relation to the land west of Panfield Lane, which is referred to, I think you're right to be prudent and cautious about that contribution, because this is a development that is taking an awful long time. I think our planning colleagues will tell you that the initial negotiations with the house builders were complex, difficult and long. And if you remember, it was initially to be 600 houses, and it turned out to be 825. They swapped. We swapped employment land for housing to get this contribution. But I'm very pleased and reassured, as I read in the report and has been confirmed here, that that 106 money is not pivotal in the financial case here. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor McKee, do you want to say anything? Or I think we've probably covered most of the bits, but just in case.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. I think I'm taking it that you think this is a great scheme and great use of taxpayers' money.
Well, it's not for us to ask Councillor Mann questions. We don't want to fall into Parliament. I'm grateful for the comments, and I'm sure you are, Councillor McKee, that Councillor Mann has made. I think that's very important.
Thank you.
Councillor Mann, you can come back. I'm not muting.
Yes, I will not use parliamentary language as evidence today.
Right, okay. Other colleagues, Councillor Bebb, I see your hand up.
Yes, it's a rhetorical question, but it needs asking anyway. Why in fact are we dependent upon the LEP funding, and could the project be managed without grant funding?
Councillor McKee?
Yes, it could, but not now, is the real answer. So what the LEP funding has done, and perhaps on a different scale, we already anticipated this to be a scheme we would bring forward, but not in 2021-22. It was pushed out to a time when we would have sufficient capital to actually put our own scheme together. And it almost certainly, and by the way, the benefits of doing it now are obvious in the report, which is post-COVID and so on. But what would have happened if we did our own scheme? It would have come later, and it would have been on a different scale, because we would have probably not put forward the level of capital that this has within it. It would have been, I wouldn't say it's halved, but it would be a smaller number. So it's made it possible to do it now, and it's made it possible to do it on a much more attractive scale with a better quality of building and offering better benefits to the community.
Councillor Bebb, do you want to say anything else?
No, I quite understand that, and it's opportunistic, and it's going to have some early yielding. Yes, I'm very satisfied with your answer.
I think I just need to correct the tense that was being used. It will, if CELEP grant the money. That is not yet a decision which has not yet been made. I think we shouldn't prejudge CELEP or their accountability board. They might not take that too kindly. We very much hope that they will, but at this moment, put it this way, the money's not in the bank as yet, although we hope that it will be before too long. Right, who else have I got who wants to ask any questions? Councillor Bowers, and then Councillor Mrs. Schmidt.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And like I think a couple of the other Cabinet members, I applaud and commend all the people who the work that's gone into the business plan and the report we got before us tonight. Not just the detail of the report, but also the speed it's taken, or it has had to take, to get it to this stage that we got tonight. Obviously, with the amount of detail, it's going to flag up a few questions. I've just got a couple that I'd like to ask the Cabinet member tonight. Firstly, do we feel that the plan is ambitious enough? And if we're making significant investment, were options considered that may have been more investment but with higher revenue returns? And also, going back a little bit on the point you was just making, Chairman, if for some reason that the select bid does fail, are we still able to bring forward an enterprise centre of some sort without that? Thank you, Chairman.
Two questions there, Councillor McKee.
Right. I'll talk about ambition. I mean, the scheme that's been brought forward is optimal for the site that we put aside, the 2 acres, for this very purpose. Yes, there were other options looked at. In fact, I think way more than I've seen, and I've seen some of the options that were looked at, much larger schemes, but they all some of those fell down because of risking compliance with the LDO, which we clearly, to get the time scale, and that is getting this shovels in the ground by March deliver by next year if possible, and 22 in March, we had to start building pretty soon and get approval through the process very quickly. And if we were there to go and try and change the LDO, we would then not be compliant with our sell-up bid. So it's a long answer, but this is the optimum scheme to deliver the optimum benefit, although other larger schemes were looked at and put aside at this moment, because they wouldn't in fact be able to come forward soon enough to meet the sell-up bid requirements. And the other question was about what happens if you don't get the funding. Well, what happens is we'll go back to the drawing board, because we wouldn't be able to bring this scheme forward from our own capital. We would in fact still have the ambition, as we've said in the report, and actually when it gets onto the strategic investment programme, we'd bring forward a scheme to be decided on scale and scope and so on and timing. But so we would have an enterprise centre, but much later and probably a smaller scale.
Councillor Bowers, you want to come back, or are you okay?
No, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, I've got Councillor Wendy Schmidt, and I think I've also got Councillor Ritchie afterwards as well. Councillor Wendy Schmidt.
On the premise that officers took best advice, could you briefly and in layman's terms explain to me how the income and expenditure was assessed?
I think the question there, you were a bit faint, Councillor Schmidt, but if I've got it right, I think it's, in layperson's terms, can you give Councillor Mrs. Schmidt how the income and expenditure was, how the income and expenditure figures were determined? Right.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, if you read in the detail, so the authority hired experts in this field of building business cases on behalf of organisations like ourselves to go forward for funding requirements, and they are experts in helping and looking at the market and the market opportunities. And in the CPC report, you will see the amount of analysis, investigation, and business case building that they did. So that's what informed the whole proposition that we put forward, and that's what I think you can be fairly assured that the best advice was given, and it's a business plan that will stand up through time. Does that answer the question, Councillor Smith?
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Ritchie, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Key, is the LEP likely to put on any restrictions or demands on the centre once it's in operational use? Question one, and if I can do a second question, if that's okay. As you outlined in your, do you want to do question one first and then question two after?
Councillor McKee?
Yeah. Well, let's take that one first. And actually, because I'm not dealing with SELAP directly, as you would imagine, that's been dealt with by officers. So could I ask either Aidan Kelly or Dominic to answer the question about what they may or may not ask as conditions once we have been granted the funding and put it into some sort of use? So Dominic? Aidan, do you want to help me answer that question?
Dominic or Aidan?
I'm happy to come in if that helps, Councillor
Okay.
McKee. Thank you. So we will have to sign a funding agreement to Essex County Council, who act as the accountable body for the LEP, and also as the upper tier authority in the Essex region. We need to seek security from them, and they need to seek security from us in terms of a funding agreement. That will set the parameters of the funding. It won't have any conditions about the necessarily about the service delivery in the centre. It is much more going to be focused on two elements. The first is around the funding, so the £7 million funding that we are seeking to secure from the LEP. Because the LEP themselves receive that from government, there are potential clawback clauses that will be put into the agreement related to the need to spend the monies by March 2022. So there'll be potential clawback conditions in that agreement, but we're confident, as per our programme, that we'll be able to spend the LEP money and indeed finalise the project very closely thereafter by the end of March 2022. The second condition is likely to be related to the outputs, the economic outputs that essentially the LEP are buying through the Getting Building Fund and their contribution of £7 million, hoping that we secure it. And we've set that at an estimated 150 jobs a year. So those are the two conditions that we'll need to meet. We will also need to make sure that we're evaluating the project year on year to offer the LEP the comfort that we're achieving the economic output results. And we've got funding within the business case to make sure that we do that as a matter of course throughout the life of the project. So it's unlikely that we will be looking at any conditions as to how the business operates, but that will come to the final negotiation as per discussions with the LEP.
Thank you, Dominic. Back to Councillor Ritchie for your second question, please.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor McKee, I noted in your opening statement for the report, you mentioned that the contingency for the business plan had been set at a figure of 10%. Given the issues that construction has faced over the previous few months and looking into the future with regards to delays in sourcing materials, supply chain and logistics, is this maybe set a little bit too low, given the current figure is obviously 10% of project cost?
Councillor McKee.
Well, the best advice we have on that, Councillor Ritchie, is that actually because of our knowledge of the site,
Councillor McKee, Councillor McKee, I don't know whether I'm the only one, but no, just hold fire because we're not receiving you very well. You're sounding as if you're in the bottle, if I can put it that way. Stop.
The authorities been out and start doing.
Councillor McKee. Right. We'll just see whether we can get Councillor McKee back again.
People bidding, where will that be? Strategic investment team that of contingency.
John, can you hear me?
I mean, do you want to...
John, can you hear me? Right.
Chairman, I've just sent a message to Councillor McKee through the chat function, so I'm hoping that he can see that.
Right. Otherwise, we'll use good old post-it notes held up to the camera because that seems to work on occasions. John, you're back now. Could you just unmute yourself?
I'm back. Sorry, I just.
Yes. No. You went into a slurred. You went into slurred speech, unfortunately.
Right. I'm back. Sorry, I did. Did you get the answer, Frankie, or not?
Again. No, start again, please, on the answer to Councillor Ritchie's second question. You can do it without the camera, if that will help.
I'll switch it off at the moment because that probably makes my audio better. The assessment is based on the fact that we know the site well, and already the officers have been out doing some test marketing on the delivery mechanisms and developers to test whether they would be ready and willing to be able to step up to the delivery mechanisms required. I don't know whether Aidan wants to make some further comment because he's having those conversations with our potential partners. Do you want to make a comment, Aidan, about the 10% contingency?
Aidan?
Happy to. Ordinarily, as Councillor Ritchie will be aware, at this stage, people talk about an optimism bias of 24%. But here we know this site, we've had extensive ground radar, there's no risk around utilities, there's no risk around ownership, no risk around third-party costs. Yes, there is a risk about supply of materials, but Ray Ford, who works for us at the moment, is a member of the Construction Leadership Council. And so we've got access to their advice. So we have factored in 10% as a sensible contingency against increased costs, primarily on materials. CLC are not predicting any interruption in terms of labour force. And as Councillor McKee intimated, we've started the procurement process through the LHC framework. We've got 3 expressions of interest from mainstream contractors, which are Farrens, Wilmot Dixon and Keir Construction. So we know we've got an appetite, but clearly the tender process needs to run through before we have cost certainty. At the moment, we have a high level of cost confidence. Cost certainty will come later in the process, and we're working closely on that. And keeping value engineering very much to the fore. And if the prices come in a little bit higher than expected, then we'll adapt the building accordingly.
Councillor Ritchie, are you content with that, or do you want to follow up?
That's fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. I think finally I saw Councillor Mrs Spray's hand up. Yep.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Councillor Cunningham has already flagged up the rather uncertain economic climate that we are in at the moment, and that could well be with us for a while. If that's the case, is there a possibility that this could become a white elephant project if the market changes in the future? Thank you.
There's a good question. Councillor McKee.
Well, yeah.
I should turn your camera off.
Clearly, we don't think that's the case. Otherwise, we wouldn't bring in.
Turn your camera off, John.
Right. Can you? I've turned it off.
You're better without your
I've
camera.
turned it off.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Right. We clearly don't think this is a white elephant. And remember, this is a 40-year program. So we're building something not for the short term, we're building it for the long term. And the report that CPC did was based on the current economic climate and the projected economic climate. And I think if you look at the risks, at least 2 or 3 of them, risk 2 was about COVID-19, risk 4 was about recession and prolonged, and in it, it's got its mitigations for that risk within the program, so within the project. So we don't think it's a white elephant, but I think that was a good question. And clearly, I can't see how this would ever become in the long term, just like our Enterprise and Innovation Centre on Springwood Industrial Estate has been a jewel in the crown.
Fine, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKee. I'm not seeing any other hands up of people who want to speak. No. Okay, so if there are no more members wishing to speak on this item, I'll therefore proceed to the vote. The recommendation is set out on page 10 of the public agenda and 240 of the private agenda. They've been moved and seconded. I'll take this by a show of hands. Those in favour, would you please show? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and myself. So that is unanimous. Those recommendations are approved. So thank you, members. That concludes this item. Before I close the meeting, can I just add my thanks to the officers and the team that have worked at a really tremendous pace to meet the very tight deadlines that were required. I very much hope that will be rewarded when it goes to the CELEP Accountability Board. Time will tell, but certainly it won't be for either the lack of effort and also the quality of the work that's been put in by the team, and I'm sure, John, you will, as the portfolio holder, will want to pay those compliments back to the team themselves. I know Dominic and Aidan are here, but it hasn't just been them as well. Thank you to everyone. And of course, it's also involved members from other departments as well working on this. So thank you for that. So as there's...
Can I just say, I'd just like to say a word. Aidan's team, can you hear me? Just nod.
Yes.
Aidan's team, I know, have worked, some of these guys have worked 7 days a week, including weekends, long and hard. But actually, I think Dominic will be the first to say this has been a team effort across all departments of the authority that came into touch with it. And I will be sending out a note to people. I think I might wait until the decisions are made rather than jinxing it. But once that's done, I will send out a note to everyone thanking them for what is actually more like a private sector response rather than a public sector response. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Right. Okay. There is no urgent business, and as a result of the fact that we've also covered the private element, I will therefore close this meeting at 6:43. Can I thank everyone for their attendance and contribution to this evening's business? Thank you very much indeed. I'll hand back to you, Emma.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, before I ask the webcaster to terminate this broadcast on the Council's YouTube channel, please can I ask members if they can complete the survey which we'll be sending to you shortly after the close of this meeting. Your feedback is very important to us on this aspect. I'd also like to remind you that the Council will be retaining performance data relating to your connection to this meeting in the event that we have a legal challenge to the way of holding this meeting. Please can the webcasting officer confirm that the YouTube broadcast has stopped?